welcome to the Deep Dive. You know, it's funny how sometimes the answers to our biggest modern problems, well, they aren't always some super complex new tech. Sometimes they're simple, natural things that have been sitting right there all along. Today, we're going deep on one of those stories, the incredible journey of Towada Stone. It's this unique material from Japan, and its surprising shift from building material into agriculture, specifically through the really pioneering work happening at Watanabe Farm.
Yeah, and our source for this, it's a really interesting case study, comes straight from a Japanese company's website. It lays out how the stone, something you wouldn't expect in farming, how it developed from just an idea to making a real impact on a working farm.
Exactly. So our mission today for you is to unpack how this rock, it's a volcanic rock, actually how it went from construction sites to becoming, well, a real source of hope for farmers. We'll look at how it tackled things like plant diseases, even labor issues, and what that might signal for, the future of sustainable food. Okay, let's get into it. So the story kicks off about 40 years back. There was this initial partnership forming. You have to picture the scene then. Agriculture was just starting to grapple with the whole chemical fertilizer dependency issue. And right around then, Watanabe Farm connects with someone, a friend, from a company called Nakano Sanjo. Now, this company, Nakano Sanjo, they were already looking into different uses for Towada Stone beyond just building things. And Watanabe Farm, they were already thinking ahead about sustainability, so they saw the potential right away. They were keen to try it out.
But there's a sad turn early on, that initial research. It stopped quite abruptly. The source material mentions that the friend from Nakano Sanyo, the one really pushing this, he actually passed away quite young. And when he died, well, the work with Towada Stone at Watanabe Farm just sort of fizzled out for a while.
Right, a real pause in the story.
Yeah.
But then, fast forward almost 30 years, and this is where it gets really interesting, because a different person from Nakano Sanyo gets back in touch with Watanabe Farm.
And here's the kicker. This new contact reveals that the original research, the deceased friend's work, it hadn't actually stopped. Nakano Sanyo had kept it going, quietly, behind the scenes. And it wasn't just ticking over, it had seriously advanced. We're talking to the point where large overseas chains were using it in experiments on their own farms. Even overseas universities were studying it. Imagine hearing that after all that time. It must have felt like huge validation for Watanabe Farm, For believing in it way back when. Made restarting the collaboration a pretty easy yes, I'd imagine.
That is quite something. Quiet persistence paying off. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? If the research was that advanced, getting international attention, why circle back specifically to Watanabe Farm after 3 decades? Was it just that old connection, or?
That's a good point. The source doesn't spell out the exact reason for re-engaging them specifically, but you get the sense their early involvement, their willingness to experiment back then, that it really mattered. Maybe that established trust, that shared sort of vision for greener farming, made them the ideal partners to take this research from the lab, basically, into large-scale use. So with the partnership rekindled, they put Towada Stone straight to work, and one of the first big wins was against this really nasty plant disease. This was back in 91, Heist 3. Watanabe Farm had started growing these new delphinium flowers, imported ones, and blam, they immediately hit a wall with something called white sclerotium disease.
Ooh, yeah, for anyone listening who isn't familiar, that's a rough one. It's a fungal thing, attacks the plant right at the soil line, causes wilting, can wipe out a lot of plants, and it's tough, really tough to handle without resorting to strong chemicals, which, of course, Watanabe Farm wanted to avoid.
Exactly their thinking. And this is where Towada Stone came in, with a surprisingly simple approach. What they did was spread about half a ton of Towada Stone particles, the really small ones, like 1 to 5 millimeters or even less, across a 400 square meter field. They used a tractor, did it about once a year, and the stone just mixes into the soil, disappears really. But the idea, the working theory anyway, is that the stone's minerals change the soil environment just enough. It seems to encourage beneficial microbes, the good guys in the soil, and these microbes help suppress the pathogens, like the one causing white sclerotium, and improve nutrient availability, basically, and they make the soil healthier, and the results. Well, since 1991, Watanabe Farm hasn't had problems with white sclerotium disease. Gone. Now, they do say the effects on overall growth or insect resistance are more sensory things the farmers observe rather than measure strictly. But the disease, its complete absence for decades. That's pretty clear-cut, and this isn't just a one-off observation. The source notes that data is being collected on this effect elsewhere in Japan and overseas, too. So people are definitely taking notice.
Wow. Just think about that. A simple stone once a year stops a major disease in its tracks for decades. No chemicals needed. It really does sound almost too simple, right? But okay, building on that success, Towada Stone is now part of tackling an even bigger issue in Japanese farming. We're talking the future of growing rice, specifically using direct seeding. See, Watanabe Farm uses direct seeding for rice, not the usual transplanting method. And the problem with transplanting the traditional way is labor. It takes up maybe a quarter of all the work involved in rice farming. And with worries about fewer people going into farming in Japan, making things more efficient is, well, absolutely critical.
Right, let's contrast those. Transplanting gives seedlings a strong start, sure, but it's so much work. Direct seeding, planting seeds straight into the field saves a ton of labor, saves costs. Big advantages there. But, and it's a big but, it's tricky. Young seedlings out in the open field, they struggle. Getting them all to sprout evenly, getting strong roots established quickly, it's much harder than in a protected nursery. So you end up with patchy fields, lower yields sometimes. Lots of research has gone into it in Japan, prototypes developed, but honestly, it's still not quite there yet, commercially speaking. It doesn't consistently beat transplanting. Which leads to the big question. If Towada Stone helps create healthier soil, could it be the thing that solves these direct seeding problems? Could it make it practical?
And that is exactly what Watanabe Farm is trying to find out. They're really experimenting with it. They're adding Towada Stone into their direct seeding process, basically hoping it can fix those early growth issues, the poor sprouting, the weak roots. And Hisao Watanabe, who represents the farm, he has this amazing, really ambitious hope. He actually said he hopes that someday people will say, Japanese agriculture was changed by Towada Stone. Just incredible vision. So wrapping up this deep dive, let's just quickly recap the journey of this Towada Stone. We've tracked it from this 40-year-old idea, an early experiment, really, to becoming a proven fix for a serious plant disease, and now potentially a key to unlocking more efficient rice farming through direct seeding. It's quite the arc.
It really is, and what strikes me is just the sheer persistence of the idea, and maybe the power of looking at simple, natural things to solve really complex problems. Towada Stone's story, it kind of reminds you that innovation isn't always about the brand new thing, right? Sometimes it's about saying an old thing, something maybe overlooked in a completely new light, finding a novel use for what's already there.
That's a really powerful thought. And it kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Think about it. How many other ordinary, maybe overlooked natural materials are out there? Right in your own local area, perhaps. Materials that might hold answers to challenges we're facing today if we just, take the time to really look and to experiment with an open mind. Lots to think about there. We hope this deep dive gave you some food for thought.